My great-uncle, Sergeant Edward Clark, served 3 tours in the Vietnam War, and during one of those tours he was hit with a mortar and listed as killed in action with his entire platoon. Several days later, he was found alive by the U.S. forces, and the Army took great efforts to identify him with only a photo that was in his hand. And he went back, after recovering from his injuries, he went back to the Vietnam War to keep his brother, my grandfather, from having to go to the active war zone. Although he did not get the hero's welcome home he deserved, he will always be a hero to me and my family.
Here in North Carolina, we have many personal heroes. In fact, you may even have one living next door. In North Carolina, we have a long military and political history, including the Vietnam War. Join us for a chance to listen to 4 Vietnam veterans and hear their stories. The 4 Vietnam veterans that are part of the North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association. We're here in the Loach, which stands for Light Observation Helicopter, and is toured with the North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association by veteran Lieutenant Colonel Ed Hughes, who flew Slicks or Hueys during the Vietnam War. We have a collection of stories and photos from the North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association we are going to share with you today. We hope you enjoy the video.
Hey, I'm Brock Nicholson, flew in Vietnam in 1969 and a little bit of 1970, and as you may know, North Carolina has, and I don't know the exact number currently, but it was about 41 individuals that were missing, that are still missing in action in Vietnam. And the unit I was in, the 48th Assault Helicopter Company, the Blue Stars, we have 1 from North Carolina. We have a total of 5 missing in action, but we have 1 from North Carolina, from Salisbury, and it's something we honor and remember every first Saturday in February at the state capitol. We'll read the names off.
So, do you think you could tell us a little bit about what this helicopter is?
This is a Mike model gunship. This is set up like the first gunships the Army had, where they hung weapon systems on the side of them. They took a utility aircraft and put weapon systems on. Throughout history, the military would hang weapon systems on everything from horses, whatever can move the weapon systems. When the helicopter came along, they figured they had a good platform to put weapon systems on. So that's what they did with this. They put weapon systems on it. This was an original gunships, and then they built the Cobra, was the next gunship, which was officially nothing but a gunship. Now, when we were looking for aircraft, we looked all over the country for an aircraft to get to do displays with. And through that effort, we found that Forestry in North Carolina and Kinston, North Carolina had this aircraft they needed to go ahead and turn in. Well, they turned it back into the United States government, and the government in turn put it on permanent loan to us.
So, can you tell us a little bit about this helicopter?
Okay, I certainly can. This is a U.S. Army utility helicopter, or UH Model 1, we call it UH-1, Series H. And it's a 1964 model, was in Vietnam early, and then brought back in 1968 and overhauled and converted to an H model at that time. It started life in its early period in Vietnam as a Delta model, a D model. It's a utility helicopter, so it's used for troop insertions in a combat situation, troop extractions, medical evacuation, even though it wasn't a medevac like the one further down, but we could do basic first aid. But the biggest benefit we could offer to a wounded troop member or soldier is that we offer speed to a medical facility.
Could you tell us a little bit about what this helicopter is?
Right now it's set up as a medevac helicopter. Its life evolved from a lift ship in Vietnam till when it came back to the United States, it became a medevac. And its last setup in the United States, it was with a guard unit as a medevac ship. like it is right now. In Vietnam, it belonged to the 170. It flew with the 173rd Airborne in Vietnam, and that over there it was a lift ship, like the H model next to us that you've already been to. And you can see the litter configuration. This is a jungle penetrator where they dropped it down through the trees, and it would penetrate by folding up the seats. They'd go down through the trees, and then they'd fold them out and set on it, and it'd be picked up back into the aircraft. The National Archives will be doing a Remember Vietnam display in the archives that'll run for 15 months long, starting in November. It'll open November the 7th and run for 15 months. We'll be North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilot Association will be taking 3 aircraft up for the opening of it, and it was requested by the National Archives for us to bring those up and set them up for display during the opening.
Yeah, this is Pete Gotch, warrant officer from Vietnam.
So, do you have like a fun or memorable story you can share with us?
Well, one of the things flying the Charlie model gunship as a new pilot, a co-pilot, was when we got in combat, the door gunner would try to, as he was shooting its target, would also try to aim his gun in such a way that the hot brass would end up going down the back of our shirt. It was just kind of a funny thing. They thought was kind of fun and getting even with the pilots.
What do you do as a group?
The North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association take 6 aircraft all over the state of North Carolina and parts of eastern United States to parades, school events, anywhere we can go to help educate the public about the Vietnam War and Army helicopters.
Why do you do it?
I do it because Vietnam is my #1 war. It's the one I served in, spent the most time in. And it's really to help educate people about the war and about the aircraft and about the people who served in it.
How many men are involved?
In our group, we have about 125 actually participate. Out of that group, we have another 25 that are hardcore participants. They show up all the time. And then there's 6 of us that actually tow aircraft.
How many helicopters do you have?
Right now we have 6. We have a UH-1 Slick, we have a UH-1 Medevac, we have a UH-1 Mike model gunship, we have a UH-1 Mike model Slick, and we have an OH-58 and an OH-6. And a Cobra. That's the one I forgot.
What is your goal as a group?
To help educate the public, to help educate children and adults as to what we did and what the aircraft did in Vietnam.
Is there anything else you would like people to know about your group?
We try to participate in everything we can in North Carolina. I like to use the phrase, we participate in everything that's legal. If we get invited, we do our best to go and support the citizens of North Carolina.
The stories that you have just heard are an important part of the U.S. and North Carolina history. The Vietnam War occurred during the time of recent U.S. history and that was full of conflict and controversy. Facts remain. From March 1965 to January 1973, 58,220 U.S. service members were killed. 1,613 of those men and women were from the great state of North Carolina. As a North Carolina Junior Historian, we want to be a generation that remembers and honors those who served and those who did not receive a hero's welcome home that they deserve, especially those who did not make it home. Thank you, North Carolina Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association, for keeping history alive.